What's good, everybody? Welcome back to Beyond Bounces and Boundaries. This is your host, Santosh Kumar. And in today's episode, we have an interesting guest lined up for you. This man has worked with some of the biggest IPL teams like Mumbai Indians and Gujarat Titans. He produces long form content for Gujarat Titans TV, that is the GTTV. He's also done the same for MITV as well. This man has worked with some of your favorite cricketers like Hardik Pandya, Rohit Sharma, and Shubman Gill. This man has also donned so many capes from entrepreneur to producer to broadcaster and to journalist. This man has done it all and he's seen it all. In today's episode, we dive deep into various aspects of media and cricket. We talk about inside IPL locker room stories. We talk about Hardik Pandya, what makes him different and what sets him apart from the crowd. Storytelling, how the broadcasting media works, how to capture attention when you're targeting a large audience, the Indian team selection conundrum, how Virat Kohli and Ravi Shastri saved Test cricket, and so much more, including Bazball and Ashes. If you're a cricket fan, you're absolutely going to adore this episode. And even if you're not a cricketing fan, you will enjoy this because this man has broke it down in simple words for you. So, without further wait, ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together and give it up for Sumedh Bilgi. Uh, Sumedh, I was just going through your old podcasts and your feeds. There's something unique and calming effect about your voice, and it's so for some people it's very natural, but for some
Mhm.
it comes through experience of whatever happened with them earlier, right? And
Mhm.
you had a very unique experience and in 2013. So can you just talk
Yeah.
us through what happened?
It's a very, very broad question. To try and sum it up, I think, like to go back in time, I realized very early that I would like to make a career in cricket, in sport. Back then, obviously, as many of us start, the aspiration was always to play cricket for India. However, I quickly realized that I don't think I'm as good as the others, uh, and that was that. I think coming to terms with that was difficult, but at the same time, there was an injury that happened. There were a couple of other things that happened, and you at some point in life you have to make peace with the way things are and make the best use out of the opportunities that you have. It's all about that. So I think somewhere I got lucky, that while I was confronting failure, in school, in college, and sort of trying to navigate my way past it, I got help at the right time, to navigate through it in the form of support from family, from friends, and also professional help, professional mental health help, at the time. Thankfully, none of my conditions were serious. Not a lot of us are as lucky as I am. I always had this innate fire to prove myself, to be somebody, um, you know, associated with cricket, obviously, but also otherwise. And um, I think I just kept taking on one thing after the other to get to where I am today. Cricket didn't work out. So what I did was I put the two things that I thought I was decent at, which is cricket and putting a good sentence of English together to make a career in cricket media, in sports media. I took the opportunities that came. Initially started off with journalism, and then moved further, to working with franchisees in the ISL, in other leagues, and then finally making, life is very interesting. It completes the circle, which means I obviously started off with wanting to play cricket, to be involved in cricket, and then I got the opportunity to work with Oak Tree Sports, which is literally the leading cricket production house in the country, where I worked for the Mumbai Indians.
Right.
And from there on, it's just been one project after the other, being involved in cricket, being associated with cricketers. I had never really even given myself a chance that would be able to do this back in the day, but it makes me happy to know that the resilience that was in me to get past the challenges that came at me and try and improve with every project I did has gotten me to a place where I think, at the beginning of my actual growth in my life, having experienced the IPL for a few seasons now with two different franchisees, and with the league being where it is at this point of time. I think, we are in a good position to grow with the growth of the league. And yeah, the rest, I think, will entirely be dependent on how well I continue to face my challenges in the time to come, and of course, life. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man. You see, you said something really important, like very interesting over here. You said you wanted to be somebody. And, when I think back about my life, right, going back from cricket camp, my father used to pick me up and he used to tell me this: in life, you can either be anybody or somebody. And people will always remember the somebody. You can either be a normal person, any other, like when I was 15, he used to say this: you can be like any other 15-year-old boy, do the normal stuff, or you can be different, stand out from the crowd. And it's going to take a while, it's going to take a lot of struggles, but if you want to be remembered, you need to stand out. This is something that he said. And coming back
Wise
to
man.
your journey, coming back to your journey, you said you loved cricket, you loved reading, you hated academics, you were a quiet young boy, and you loved too much, and you spoke very little. And all of this was a very dangerous combination. And now when you look at how your career has transformed or grown, you've conquered it all, right? It's safe to say that you've faced all of this and conquered it, which you also say, which also you take lessons from Batman, right? So how did you go about this? How did you go about this process?
Inspiration comes in various ways, in different places, in different spaces. I think storytelling is incredibly powerful. With, even if it is work of fiction, I think work of fiction, like the Batman, also comes from the writer's experiences of life. Of course, it involves a sense of imagination, but at the same time, these are emotions that perhaps the writer has faced or has observed others facing. So, I think fiction should never be discounted for something imaginative, something that doesn't exist in the world. In fact, there is a very popular saying. It says that the truth sometimes can be stranger than fiction. You sometimes look at the actual realities of life and wonder, how strange is this? But fiction often can be understood by logic. And it's interesting how that pans out. So I think, yes, inspiration has come in various ways to me. I've always been, I was always an impressionable boy. People that would speak kindly, be strong, make something out of their life, always had an impact on me. In the early days, obviously a lot of athletes inspired me. A lot of people that faced adversity, people like Muhammad Ali really inspired me. In cricket, obviously, I was always inspired by Sachin sir's ability to get back from injury. And then when I met him and spoke to him, it took me to another level of inspiration. The same with Rohit's ability to bounce back when things are against him inspired me as I grew into my career, as I met different athletes in different spaces, including athletes that don't play sports as popular as cricket. They inspired me as to how they keep going every day. Even if there are no cameras around them, even if there are no big paychecks around them, they still keep going every single day. That inspired me. So, and very recently, I think, to sum it up, Mohit Sharma inspires me. I'm very happy to call him an elder brother. He's been a source of strength for me lately. to see him come back from being injured, having those terrible shins that he has, plays with shin splits, to facing difficulties in his personal life, then now bouncing back, becoming fit again last year, and then, becoming the second joint purple cap holder last year in the IPL, 10 years after his debut in the IPL,
And almost
was
sealing the
was
win.
inspiring. Yeah, almost sealing the win,
Almost.
almost being there, bowling that final over, when we all knew that it was going to be tough. He still gave us hope with those first three deliveries that he bowled. So there are these moments in life, especially when you're impressionable, when you're curious, when you want to observe the life of fellow men around you. There is inspiration there for you to absorb and make something out of it. So yeah, I have to thank all the athletes that I've had a chance to work with so far, and by no means have I stopped. I think I'm only at the beginning of my journey, and I hope to continue to tell great stories of these incredible athletes, as my career continues to grow.
Right. Uh, it's amazing how we take inspiration from people whose journeys are very similar to us, and yet their lives are completely different. Right. One
True.
of the things
Yeah.
which I was thinking about was today morning. While
Mm.
growing up, my favorite superhero was Spiderman. Right.
Mm.
And as you grow up, you like my favorite superhero changed to Batman. Right. One of the
Mm.
things which while I was thinking out loud was that when you're Spider-Man, Peter Parker, you resonate with him as a child because of who he is as a person. He has a lot of insecurities
Mm.
that he needs to face. The same
Mm.
that goes with when you are as a student in school, right? Then as you grow up, when you face the world, you realize that there are things that you need to face. Your fear overtakes the insecurities, right? And that's where
Yeah.
Batman comes into place, because the whole concept of Batman was to face your fear, right?
Yeah.
And that's
Always.
that's what he's taught us.
Yeah. And I think also, like firstly it starts with facing fear, and then later there are two things about Batman that are fantastic. By no means is it a fairy tale. Batman's life is a sad life.
Definitely.
There is no two ways about it. He lives a life of pain, of anger, of misery. But at the same time, the ancient scriptures have also said that life is suffering. It truly is. There are no two ways about it. However, what's interesting about Batman is that he takes his rightful place in the world, and he goes beyond that to fulfill a responsibility that nobody really asked him to fulfill. He took it on himself to become this person,
Yes.
to become this figure, to become this symbol of good versus evil. And these, while you and I might not be putting on a cape to go out at night in our cities to fight crime, the message that you take from Batman is that often, you have to stand up and take your rightful place in family, in society, and try and back good no matter what, as much as you can, as many times as you can. Do your duty as a man, and just keep going. Just keep going, and you never know, life might surprise you at some point. That's
Definitely.
the hope.
Definitely. That's
Yeah.
the lesson. You talked about
Yeah.
storytelling, right? And we
Mm.
work in a field where storytelling is really important, especially in journalism, right?
Mm.
So, what are the things that you learned while storytelling, and how do you go about story? What is your process of, like, how do you convey good stories? Because you've produced for Gujarat Titans as well and Mumbai Indians as
Yeah.
well. That's the audience for them is such a huge scale, and to connect with
Mm.
them requires impeccable storytelling. So,
Mm.
how do you go about the process of it?
To be honest, when your characters are strong, you don't really need to rely upon intricate detailing in storytelling, especially in sport. The important thing in cricket and in sport is that the athlete has to be at the core of it. when you place the athlete, their personality, their traits, right, who they are, little things about them that are not known to, everyday cricket fans, in front of everyday cricket fans, that is where you begin to see the domino effect. um a lot of content today is personality driven. Who speaks is far more important today than, of course, what is being spoken is definitely important, but who speaks is incredibly important. So when a Hardik, when a Shubman, like you mentioned, uh talks, right, people would want to listen. But how do they go about it is incredibly important. What is the context we're setting? What is the message that we're giving out? um, how do we want to portray this brand, the individual brand and the collective brand of a franchise is very important. So there are these few things that need to be always kept in mind, I think, while storytelling. However, like something I learned from my one of my favorite bosses ever, Gaurav Kapoor, an absolute legend at all of this. Gaurav said once, you need to be able to convey the video in one sentence. In one sentence, can you sum up the video? What is the video about? Right? Write it down in one sentence. If you cannot sum it up in one sentence, then you're in for trouble.
Right. Right.
So
Just like explaining it to
simplify the
the
idea. Absolutely.
explaining it to the
Like
5 year
every,
child.
absolutely. And even more so, just simplifying it, right? Once you simplify it at the core, then you can build the pyramid, right? You have your core idea at the top, and then you expand. Visual cues, audio cues, all of them come together to make a good story happen. I'm at the very, very beginning of my, sports storytelling journey. I say that despite having worked for all these years, because I think being a student of the game and a student of the craft is very, very important. But at the same time, I think all I can tell you is what I've observed. And what I've observed truly is that putting the athlete at the core of the story, um, is incredibly important. For example, we were doing a campaign, for GT this year, which was centered around cancer awareness. If you remember one of the games, GT
Yeah.
wore the pink jersey, the
Yes.
lavender
Yep.
jersey.
Lavender jersey. Yep.
Correct. So we were thinking about a video idea. What do we do around the lavender jersey story and try and get that message out there for the public? And we realized that, we looked at 1,000 ideas. What do we do? How do we get it out? How do we make all of it happen? And then we realized that Matthew Wade had fought cancer in his early years. What a better way to convey the story than to put Matthew Wade at the core of the video.
True.
And have him convey that he's a survivor, that he is a fighter, and that
Definitely.
the brand backs the idea of fighting for cancer, against cancer, and for awareness. So I think, to reinforce the point, putting the athlete at the core is super important to drive any conversation forward in the sports world today.
Right. Yeah. Because when you put Matthew Wade, you're putting the human in front of the camera to convey the story,
Absolutely.
and people always resonate with people who are similar to them, right? The stories. That's what
Absolutely.
at the end of the day.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Like now, as we transition from like mental health into cricket, right? One of the
Yeah.
lines I want to touch about is, how is mental health used, or how is it taken care of with players in IPL? Because how do franchises work with players to help them keep their sanity, and also help the players have their headspace? Because at the end of the day, as athletes, headspace matters. And if a batsman or a bowler or any player to that matter is not in a good headspace, it definitely reflects on the performance.
I do not want to mince my words. I think back in the day, a lot of cricketers would say, cricket is 90% mental, 10% physical, and would just say it for the sake of it. Um, And really, to be honest, mental health conversations in cricket back in the day were not really regarded to be very important. I think as society in itself, we were not very considerate about mental health until recently. There are no two ways about it. And I think that reflected in cricket as well for a long, long time. However, I think in the last decade or half a decade, things have really begun to change. Um, like just to give you an example of Gujarat Titans in itself, one of the best people that I've met in cricket is the director of cricket at Gujarat Titans, Vikram Solanki. Vikbai and I were having a conversation about this late in the night one day, and we were talking about it because it is one of my ambitions to do something in this space in the future. And we were just chatting about it, and Vikbai and I were talking, and he said, Sumedh, a lot of people just say this, but now we understand how important it is. It's not 90% mental, 10% physical. It's 50% mental, 50% physical. And that is the absolute proper ratio that we need to keep in mind. Sometimes it tilts beyond the 50%, where an athlete needs to recover mentally first and then they recover physically. But at the same time, what he meant was that these two things now equally go hand in hand. It's no longer just a thing that you say and get away with just for good
Definitely.
CSR,
Yep.
or to show that you have a good culture in the team. There's actual constant effort being taken by teams. Alongside having the psychologist, alongside having a mental conditioning coach, who is an incredibly important figure now, in professional sport, for that matter. The coaches by themselves have taken it upon themselves to, you know, constantly check in with players, see what the mental conditioning is of a player after they fail, after they win, after they have a good run of form, after they have a poor run of form, after they are dropped, right? All these scenarios are being noted and considered while building a team, which is phenomenal. I have been watching franchisees closely from 2018, 2017, and I can tell you for a fact that it was all about skill, all about temperament. Perhaps that's a word we use a lot in cricket, right? Temperament. But now a lot of it is conditioning. A lot of it is what's going on between your ears. And if you're good here, then you can be molded, shaped, worked with, from a skill perspective to fit in the combination of a team. So I think there's a lot of work being done. There is, not just when it comes to playing matches, but when you travel, when you rest, when you train, in the off season as well. Coaches are constantly in touch with the players. Physiotherapists are in touch with the players. Strength and conditioning coaches are in touch with the players. Psychologists are in touch with the players. So it gives me immense joy to be able to to tell you that we've made strides. Obviously, it's going to be an evolving conversation. We will always have the odd coach who will say, "Ye kuch nahi hota, wo kuch nahi hota." But I think we've taken a few steps in the right direction.
Yep.
And I'm sure that as a fraternity, we will, continue to work towards this, and in the time to come, be in a place where athletes feel safe, protected, cared, and loved, and
Def-
empowered. Most importantly,
Definitely.
yeah,
Definitely. While you were talking about this, about players being dropped and, how they come back, the first
yeah.
player that came to my mind was Vijay Shankar. What a season did he have with Gujarat, man?
I love Vijay, man. He's all heart. I love
The
him.
w- and I read a recent article about him where he
Yeah,
went back to NCA. He took a separate place and he stayed there.
yeah,
He focused on his diet. He got lean
yeah,
and he focused on the right things. Then he came back. He came
yeah,
back to Ranji. He scored hundreds. Then he had a beautiful
yeah,
IPL season, and he's
yeah,
having a good TNPL as well. So yeah,
yeah.
that's what.
Vijay is is brilliant, man. I mean, it's incredible, like how your impressions of a person can change. Before heading into working with GT, like the noise that people create around a player, right? You sometimes tend to succumb to it. We always wondered, listen, there's so much potential, there's so much potential, there's so much potential. Why isn't he performing? Why isn't he performing? But then when you get to meet the athlete, you realize what they've been through.
Definitely.
And to see Vijay, like lose the weight. I've seen pictures of him last year at GT, puffy cheeks, right? There's a little bit of fat everywhere, little, like one layer of fat, right? You know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
Um, and then this season to see him be so lean and batting for 2 hours, 2.5 hours in the nets and literally tonking every single ball, has been brilliant. I remember this one innings that he played. And it's incredible why, I remember this and I'm never going to forget it. It's the same game that Shubman scored the 100 in Bangalore versus RCB, right?
Mhm.
Everyone's talking about Shubman. Um, but for me, that game, the way Vijay batted alongside Shubman, there was 1 6 that he smashed that hit the roof at the KSCA. I think it was off Hazelwood or one of the bowlers of Siraj. Siraj
Yeah, I
coming in
think so.
bowling 150 clicks, and he hit him over mid wicket and it hit the roof and came back down. We were all just shocked and happily shocked because we had seen this happen in the nets. However, to see him replicate that in the middle was phenomenal. And then later, when we met and we started having filter coffee every day in the morning, he loves his filter coffee. Uh, I understood the trials that he went through, the difficulty that he went through, how he had to quit milk and paneer and
Yep.
all of those things to lose the weight was brilliant, man. He's somebody who deserves the world, and I hope there is a resurgence that takes him beyond where he is right now. He's obviously such a valued player at GT and will continue to be so. But let's see now from here, where does he go? It'll be nice to
Definitely.
see.
Definitely. Talking about GT, the success of a team, a franchise,
Yeah,
is success को team पे छोड़ दो. The failures are mine.
yeah, yeah,
The man one and only Hardik Pandya.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, he's taken a huge leap into the person that he's become, right?
yeah,
We all know what happened, and bouncing back from that, and the way you now the way you look at Hardik Pandya, especially in the Asia Cup, right, against Pakistan, he gave that nod, which tells you the story of the person that he's become, the calmness that you can literally see in his eyes. So how what were some of the I mean, you've seen him in the close quarters, right? What were some of the lessons that you've learned from him, that you've picked his brains from?
just in having incredible faith and confidence in your ability. I haven't, I, I mean, there are very, very, very few athletes that I've met that are like Hardik. Very few. I can count on my fingers, maybe one or two. It's literally Virat and Hardik. Maybe one or two that I'm not doing justice to, by maybe just Preet. Uh, but these guys have this innate strength in them to never give up. Never. Whatever happens to you, you just do not give up. There is something in their eyes that just tells you that these guys will not back down from a fight. Not a physical fight, but of the toughest fights in life. Um,
Definitely.
Hardik, Hardik's, like I've mentioned many times on different podcasts. I've seen Hardik from 2018, from his early years at MI,
Yep.
and the one thing that has not changed in him is who he is as a person. He's one of the most misunderstood people. Like if I don't know if he'll see this, he'll kill me for saying it. But Hardik is one of the nicest people, one of the nicest boys in cricket. He's, like the persona that a lot of people have created around him is not really justified to the person who he is. But to be honest, he understands the world, and he respects the fact that fine, this is how the world is. But at the same time, he's got the strength to keep going and just keep doing his work.
Right.
And that is the one thing that I've learned from him. To have faith in your ability, to have supreme confidence in who you are, and it's not fake. I have to tell you, it is real. It is as real as it gets. And to just keep doing the work. What's been impressive about him is how he's bounced back again from a career-threatening back injury, from losing his father to becoming the man of the house at such a tender age, then becoming a husband, a father, all of this in a matter of a few years. And at the same time, he also got the opportunity to be captain of a franchise. And the way he's taken it on has been fantastic. He trusts the people around him, he lets them do their job, and he does his own job while taking care of everybody. So I think exciting times for us with him being India captain as well in the white ball setup.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it'll be, we'll see a very, very solid, strong, confident Team India shape up under him. I have no doubts about that.
Definitely. I think he is going to be the man of the future. Like we said, all the qualities that we talked about Hardik are the things that is going to take him to all the success that's going to come up in the future. Talking about IPL, right? This year we saw the implementation of impact players, right? And impact players has definitely impacted how the tournament went about it, how the tournament went. And what I feel, although now there might not be any, we might not be implementing the impact player rule in ICC tournaments soon, but definitely ICC is going to take this forward, because what I feel is when T20 cricket came forward, there was a lot of pushback on the format of the game, even T10 to that matter. And now T20 cricket, franchise cricket is ruling the global scape of cricket, right? The world scope. And what do you think now? Because of that, earlier teams used to have one all-rounder, two all-rounders. Now, because of impact players, the role of all-rounder has now been diminished, if that makes sense, because that player is being replaced with a pure batsman, and the bowler is being, and the other player is being replaced with a pure bowler. So how do you see this transition taking place with the future of impact players?
I think the area, look, firstly, I think it's early days. The way I look at it, the teams that started the league early, that played the first few games, cracked the code of the impact player nicely, and everyone just followed that template of substituting, say, a bowler for a batter or a batter for a bowler, and then therefore diminishing the all-rounder, like you said. However, I think there might be an area where we start to work with the overseas players, because like the substitution of overseas players at this point of time is still a permutation that you have to be mindful of, right? If you play with a full stack of foreigners, then you cannot get another foreign player in. If you play with three players, then the combination changes again. And at the same time, we obviously know that the Indian players have now risen to a place where we are not as dependent on foreign players as the early days of the IPL to be the game changers. I still feel, the skill sets that certain foreign players get will be very important. For example, foreign fast bowlers, I think, are still very, very important. I think foreign openers are still very, very important in the league. While we've seen combinations that have done the job, I still feel that skill sets of players from Australia, England, the West Indies, New Zealand, and South Africa, and others as well, With T20 cricket growing and T10 cricket growing, I see these countries growing as well, and therefore imports are still going to be important. So how do you work with the foreign players? What type of a squad do you build, and how many foreigners do you play in your initial lineup? I think will play an important role in how you work with the impact player in the time to come. Um, the other thing that also that I have been speaking about a lot is that the lack of Indian full-fledged all-rounders has been there for a while in the country. While Hardik is Hardik, when he comes into a team, the combination of a team becomes entirely different, right? It becomes so balanced, and you suddenly look like a good side. But at the same time, with him going out, who are the other options? There's a Shardul Thakur, there are a couple of others, but that's it. The list ends right there. So, I think if and when you see, a resurgence of the Indian all-rounder, how that rule is then used is going to be very interesting, right? At this point of time, it makes for good broadcasting. Of course, it has an event like significance around it in the course of a game, and also it allows teams to hide their weaknesses in a way by using the substitution. Um, but I think as teams start figuring out how to counter the impact player dynamic, then what is the next caveat that happens is going to be very interesting to see.
Definitely, because with the World Cup coming up, all rounders are definitely going to play a part here, and so many all rounders around the cricket, around the globe, they have had experience playing in India, and which is why this particular role is very crucial with the World Cup coming up. So talking about the World Cup, right? I was looking at some stats since the last World Cup, 2019 World Cup. 23 players have debuted for India. And from there, if you break it down, the number of players that have played more than 10 games for India are 5. And further, if we break it down, the number of players that have played more than 15 games is only 1, Surya Kumar Yadav.
Interesting.
So what I was thinking was, is having too many options becoming a problem in stabilizing the team for India, or are we giving the opportunities right away? Because we saw Rinku Singh, he was left out now, but although it's T20, he's been a consistent performer, right? But certain players, Venkatesh Iyer, he had a brilliant IPL, only especially the second half. He was given in India cap, right? And then he's still fighting for his chance. He's knocking the doors now. He still had a wonderful IPL this season as well. So I want to know, how do you think about this whole dynamic with selection process?
It's interesting now that, firstly, I think there's been a lot of there's been a lot of gray around what the committee is, who takes the call, what's happening, who has the final say, etc., around the committee for a long time, right? And it's interesting the way, there was obviously a temporary committee appointed under Jatin Paranspe, who I respect a lot. And then after that, there was no committee, and then the whole Chetan Sharma thing happened. So I think, there have been a few problems, and in that interim, there have been a few questions around selection. But I think a lot of that is going to see it being sorted out after Ajit Akarkar's appointment. I think he is, he's one of the best cricketing minds out there, and to see him there is quite nice, firstly. Secondly, I feel yes, there have been instances where you've thrown players right into the scheme of things after a good IPL, but because because at the end of the day, it is a human being making the calls. These calls are always going to be subjective. Always. Selection is never an objective process. It's always a subjective process. I firmly believe in that, because there is one head of the committee, there is one head coach, there is one captain, one senior player who can influence things so much so because they have the conviction that a certain player can click at a certain level, that a player can be fast tracked or can be really made to grind in domestic and then come in later. So we are always going to be making errors. We are always going to be making mistakes. But at the same time, I feel there are certain realities of Indian cricket that you have to live with. And one of the realities is that we have the biggest pool of cricketers in world cricket available. And and on their best day, they can go into not only the India side, but most international sides and perform for them.
Definitely.
While this is the reality, I think like different selectors are going to have different ways. Some of them are going to throw people right in that they believe in, like I mentioned earlier. Some of them are going to ensure that there is a rigorous process of trial and error happening before you get into the India squad. Now, what path do you choose as a committee is going to decide things. With obviously some selections have been questionable, but I think broadly speaking, when you have such a big pool, it would be a crime to not give chances to different players and see if they can perform. But at the same time, when you give them, like the numbers that you mentioned, you give them chances and you take them away before they play 5 games, you don't really give them a long enough rope to prove themselves. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg situation, but these are realities of Indian cricket that I think everybody is aware of, and you just have to live with it.
Another thing, like we are talking about the vast pool of players that are available, right? One of the things, like transitioning into Test cricket, right? One of the things that Dhoni said this year in IPL was Patirana should not touch the red ball at all. But Malinga
I like that he said that.
Malinga came in and he said that he should play Test cricket, right? And part of the reason why I feel Dhoni made that comment was because, one, he's an exceptional talent. Two, he's a very unique bowler, right? Now, the same thing when you look at India, we have Jasprit Bumrah. Jasprit Bumrah has been the best bowler for India in the last 5 years since he's debuted for India, right? And now he's been out of playing cricket for the past 1 year or so because of his injury. Do you think that exposing, like having different teams, say like what England is doing, different teams for different formats, would it be helpful in one, managing the load, two, to extending the careers of player? How do you think about it?
I have no doubts about it. That is the future. That is how you have to play going forward. I say that because of two things. A, I do not see the cricketing calendar being reduced at all. It's a joke. I mean, if you ever even mention it in a conversation with somebody and say, "Hey, I think we should play less cricket," they're going to laugh at you. Primarily because cricket is now, in my opinion, a full-fledged economy in itself. There is phenomenal wealth being generated for many stakeholders, not just the players. In fact, the players are only one very important stakeholder. Obviously, they're at the core of everything, but at the same time, by no means are they the only people making money via cricket. So when it's flourishing in such a way, nobody's going to take a step back. So we're always going to be playing more cricket in the time to come. We're going to try and innovate, make new tournaments, new rules, change it around. But it's not going to go down. While this is happening, to be able to, while cricket continues to grow in such a way, while the calendar continues to be populated, to have players constantly moving and changing conditions, ball that you play with, the colors that you play with, the teammates that you play alongside with, is going to be challenging, to say the least. If you play T20 cricket, then maybe playing in different leagues around the world with different teammates and different conditions is all right. But if you play 50 over cricket, you play 20 over cricket, and then you play, test match cricket, it's going to be a challenge. For example, if you are playing, let's say you're an Indian domestic player, right? You start off by playing the Duleep Trophy, then you play the Irani Trophy, then you play Vijay Hazare, then you play the Ranji Trophy, right? You play T20 cricket to start off with, you suddenly go to 50 over cricket, then you go to test cricket, and then suddenly you go to IPL. So the progression is always breaking. It's never steady. And I've spoken to a lot of domestic players, and they all feel that it should be the other way around. That you should, before the IPL, the last domestic cricket tournament that you should be playing is the Syed Mushtaq Ali, and not the Ranji Trophy.
Ranji Trophy, yeah.
It definitely plays an impact. It troubles the players a fair bit. So, A, the cricketing calendar, obviously, but B, I feel, as much as players want to play all formats and want to be visible and want to build a legacy and want to make money, and none of that is wrong, it's very important to ensure that A, that you're getting the most out of your players, and B, that most of your teams are winning most games, to streamline processes and streamline squads. And at the same time, have different people leading those units so that they're laser focused on what they have to do. So I'm all for separate teams, separate captains also, to be honest, and, separate setups in all formats, for sure.
Definitely. I mean, especially with the rise of franchise cricket, right? It has definitely impacted the way we play test cricket itself, right? I'll go to the impact in test cricket in a bit. Look, franchise cricket has taken over the world. And like we talked about earlier as well.
Yeah.
Where do we draw the line here? Because, for example, when we go to the West, NBA or NFL to that matter, most of their games are in the National Basketball Association, NBA, right? They play for their franchises. And then when it comes to the country games, they either play the FIBA tournament or the Olympics. Only 2 tournaments for 4 years. In 4 years once. And they get to don the USA jersey or whatever. Now, the same when we look at this cricket as well, we have one World Cup for every 4 years. And there's a lot of bilateral series that's going on. So where do you see the trajectory of franchise cricket taking this forward? Do you think that it'll become, is there a chance to become like similar to the West, where cricketers are playing across the globe, franchise cricket, and once in 4 years they come back to don the Indian jersey? And we saw what happened with West Indies, right? So
No, I think the sports, the couple of sports that we mentioned, the NBA, let's look at that. Let's look at NFL. Let's look at MLB, and let's look at cricket, right? All these three are on one side and cricket is on one side. And I say that because the structure and the way these games, these leagues have grown from the very beginning, these sports, the way they've grown from the very beginning, have been completely different. Cricket predominantly has been operational between countries. And forget about operational. I feel emotions run sport, right? To be very honest with you. Emotions, fandom, the feeling of wanting to win, rivalries, all these things are important constructs of the game. No matter how much we talk about the cricket economy and we talk about growth and all of these things, you need to have these 4 fundamentals in the right place, and you have to grow in accordance to these 4 fundamentals. These fundamentals in cricket are so, like for the longest time, based in intra-country rivalries, right? Inter-country rivalries, and Ashes, for example, and India-Pakistan, for example. So many other rivalries that exist, so many other dynamics that exist. It is going to be, dare I say it, near impossible for us to go away from that, because A, it's going to for an ICC or a BCCI, you're going to go away from an emotion that a sports fan feels on a consistent basis for the game, right? When you go away from that, you're taking away a big formula for success that you've had, and for the longest time, and potentially a formula for success that will only pay you dividends more and more as time goes on, right? Marketing an India-Pakistan game, you don't really need to put an effort. Marketing a franchise competition between, let's say, a Sunrisers Hyderabad and a Rajasthan Royals, थोड़ा तो marketing करना पड़ेगा ना, थोड़ा तो बात डालना पड़ेगा, स्टार को प्रोमो डालना पड़ेगा, people have to write about it, कुछ तो करना पड़ेगा हाइप बिल्ड करने के लिए. इंडिया पाकिस्तान के लिए बताओ हाइप जरूरी है? You don't even need it. If there's only an article from the ICC and one press conference each from the captain of India and the captain of Pakistan, that is enough hype for an India-Pakistan game. That is just, and it's not the same for the NBA. For example, if the USA are playing Mexico in a high-profile South American contest, it's just not the same as a Lakers playing the Clippers. It's just not the same, right?
Definitely.
So I think it's chalk and cheese. It's apples and oranges. Just the way the cricket has grown as a sport in the time so far, going away from that model to playing franchise cricket around the year is going to be hard. And secondly, to give you a technical answer, the IPL is a closed league. You have salary caps, you have purses, you have a limited amount of time. Whereas the NBA, the football leagues around the world are open leagues, which is why you're seeing huge salaries being paid in Saudi Arabia, in the Premier League, etc. There is no limitations for the amount of money being paid, whereas the IPL is a closed league, right? So it's a completely different conversation, financially different. The construct of the leagues are different. The emotions that the fans feel in cricket and other leagues are different. So to be able to replicate what the NBA has done or what the Premier League has done in its structure and format is going to be very hard. But I think what the league means to the country, to the world, the eyeballs, I think IPL is well and truly on its way to, rubbing its shoulders with the NBAs and the NFLs and the EPLs of the world, without a shadow of a doubt. So in that manner, yes, I think we can replicate, but I think structurally it's tough.
Definitely. You think you hit on 2 points really well: emotions and rivalry, right? We are talking about now the impact of franchise cricket on Test cricket. Do you think Test cricket needs to be saved? What is your thoughts on that?
I think the game is saving itself.
Bazball going to save Test cricket?
I think Virat Kohli saved it before Bazball.
Exactly. One of the reason why I feel Bazball has become really huge is because of, one, the media coverage, and two, they've termed it. But it was Virat Kohli and in that phase when Virat Kohli and Ravi Shastri took over India. Right from the first game, day 5 against Australia, we were chasing 350 odd runs, and we almost chased it down. Right, that's when it started, and Virat Kohli and Indian team brought crowds across the globe wherever we played. So how do you think about how do you think about the global media versus the Indian media? Do you think what are your thoughts on this? Because globally, we saw the impact of just the term Bazball, right? The kind of eyes it's turned around. But Virat Kohli and Indian team have done it for the past 5 years, 6 years.
It's interesting that you say that. I think Bazball is an ingenious marketing move. It really is. It's fabulous marketing. And credit to whoever came up with the term. I do not know if it was a Sky Sports producer or if it was somebody from the Telegraph or whatever, but brilliant. I think English media and English folks have had this habit of hyping themselves up for the longest time. It's just an incurable disease that a couple of wins later they start becoming cocky. A couple of performances later they start throwing attitude around, and a few wins later they get humbled. So I think it's just them, right? It's just them. um in India, I think we criticize our cricketers a little too much. We are overcritical of every single thing that they do. While I have nothing against the broadcasters. In fact, I like the work that the broadcasters do. This is not, like a lot of the narratives that are set in Indian cricket are not done by broadcasters. They are done by independent journalists and publications. Um, so I think just the way the mindset of the English media, the mindset of American media, oh sorry, Australian media, and the mindset of Indian media are very, very different from each other. Um, I think the broadcasters did a good enough job when Virat was captain. Even now, when he scores, they do a good enough job to hype him up. Um, but I think it's also, just the I'm going to say something controversial. I think cricket for the longest time was very non-inclusive. The narrative was always driven by the way the British set it, by the way their attitude went. It is, the way football is inclusive, cricket is not as inclusive. For example, you need to be of a certain quality to play test cricket. Otherwise, you cannot play test cricket. And like football, you have to have a certain number of eyeballs. Otherwise, you do not get the same piece as the other nations get. So cricket in itself is, the way international cricket is constructed is not as inclusive as other sports. And I think that rubs off on the way the English media operate, the way we operate, and the way the Australian media operates. And that's how you see this dynamic pan out. So it's a it's a very broad cultural conversation, and if we continue talking, it's going to take till tomorrow. But I think Bazball, is just great marketing. It's a well placed figure in the form of Brendan McCullum at the core of affairs for England, and it's just the English media trying to revive a team that was gone. We all know how England suffered before all of this happened. They were nowhere close to Australia.
Winning one out of the last
And to be
17 games.
Yeah, which is exactly. And now I think because of this format of playing, they on paper and in the media, somehow they've given themselves a chance. But I think Australia are proving uh, that to
Are
be entirely wrong.
are
Superior team
Australia
throughout.
exposing the Bazball?
They
Because
are definitely. Yeah, go
because
on.
so when I'll take this analogy with NBA, right? Kevin Durant, he leaves Golden State Warriors to join the Brooklyn
Yeah,
Nets, and
yeah,
he wins 2 championships with Golden State, and then
yeah,
his career pans out in a different way, and this move is heavily criticized, right? Then last year, Russell Wilson in NFL, he goes on a mammoth transfer to from Seattle to Denver, right? And at first they welcomed him, but then by the end of the season they wanted him out of Denver. Now the same with Bazball as well. They won the 11 out of the 12 tests, and they
yeah,
called it literally the savior of Test cricket. Now in the
yeah,
past few weeks things have completely changed, and
yeah,
what I feel is that winning hides your mistakes, but losing exposes them. And
for sure.
Australia have done it. They've literally exposed the Bazball.
Yeah, I mean, let's not let's not discount it out so early because we've still got 3 matches left. And
Definitely, yeah.
yeah, what Stokes did at Lords was insane. But that's down to the individual. That's down to the individual. But I think, yeah, I think Test cricket, to go back to what you mentioned, Test cricket is saving itself. There is, you know, very clearly there is a designated place for it in the international calendar. I have found myself to be fatigued of white ball cricket and craving for some test cricket, red ball action at the end of IPL or every IPL. And what test cricket offers is incredible, especially when you watch cricket happening in, say, India, Australia, and England. The interesting thing, the important thing for us to note is that test cricket happening outside these three countries needs to obviously be given a lot of attention. South
Exactly.
Africa, for example, um, you know very clearly South Africa did not prioritize playing test cricket. Instead, they launched the SA20. It was the 50 over competition. Sorry, they didn't play they were supposed to play an ODI competition. And they said, listen, we're not doing that. And then they focused on the SA20. West Indies, for example, is a place that needs incredibly important attention very, very soon. New Zealand somehow finds a way to sustain itself, but is there opportunity for growth there? People end up watching test cricket that happens in New Zealand for sure, but it's not the same as it used to be before. So I think countries outside England, Australia, and India definitely need to work on it. But I think as long as these three countries continue to play test cricket, competitive cricket, and cricket that inspires others, at least test cricket is staying a little bit more than staying afloat. And then what the ICC do to take cricket forward, red ball cricket forward in the other countries is going to be important.
How much do you think the monetary power is playing a part? Because India, Australia, England are superpowers, and most of the nations outside these three are struggling to host countries and get the broadcast done. How much do you think
Yeah.
this will be a part?
I mean, cricket, to be honest, cricket, the way I look at it, cricket always, in the last few years, especially, the power of the broadcaster has become, far more apparent than it used to be earlier. We used to always think, no, it's the board that controls everything, but it's very clearly, the broadcaster sets the template for the growth of any sport in any country on the face of the earth today. When there was no cricket happening during COVID, this is a great story. A league in Papua New Guinea received fan code's broadcasting rights. Fan code went all the way to one of these countries in Southeast Asia or South America to sponsor a league where COVID hadn't reached yet, because they wanted to present some cricket to cricket fans in the world. That is how powerful cricket broadcast is. And that, I could be wrong. It might not be PNG, but it was one of these countries. It received its first ever broadcasting deal. And I think, I hope the board used that money to sort of help cricket grow in that country. But that's the power of broadcast, and that's the power of the media today. So without a shadow of a doubt, with Sky, Fox, and Star, Sony, Geo, ruling broadcasts in England, Australia, India, respectively, these three countries are obviously going to be in great health. The other broadcasters, obviously, in New Zealand. New Zealand, obviously, as you know, Amazon tried to play around with the rights a little bit.
Yeah.
Something interesting happened there. But South Africa, West Indies, couple of the other countries will need to work on their broadcasting power. There is no two ways about it. And how do you package cricket now is going to be incredibly important. So, yes, long answer to your question. Money and the broadcasters are undoubtedly placing India, Australia, England in a good place. And it'll be interesting to see how the other boards now work with their local broadcasters or international overseas broadcasters to propel, the series that they host at home.
Yeah. Definitely. Talking about England Bazball, right?
Yeah,
What do
yeah.
you think of Johnny Bairstow's dismissal? And who do you think crossed the spirit of the cricket, England or Australia?
What is spirit of cricket? It's this. It's an intangible, um, undefinable thing that is up in the air. It's you try to hold it. What is it? It's nothing. The spirit of cricket is the spirit of competition. That is what the spirit of cricket is. You have to compete. Spirit of cricket is not to try and please your opponent by being nice to them. It's about winning. When Alex Carey collected it, he did not wait even for a moment before releasing the ball from his gloves. He and
Wasn't
and that in itself is the answer. He obviously observed Besto walking out of his crease now and then, and he took his opportunity. It's as simple as that. I'm with Australia on this, to be very honest with you. I understand England. I understand what they're saying, but I think they've made far too big a hue and cry out of one incident than it
definitely.
warrants. They needed to get on with the game. They need to get on with the series. I would love to see England fight back and do better in this series. We all want to see a great contest between the two teams. And I think for them to get into that space, they have to let this go.
Definitely. Because Harsha Bogle, he tweeted this, that you bring in the laws of cricket when you want it. When it's going against you, you bring in the spirit of cricket, right?
Yeah.
For example,
Yeah.
Glenn McGrath.
The 2019 World Cup thing.
Now here, Mitchell
No,
Stark's
but
catch.
do you remember the 2019 World Cup thing when in the final over, when Stokes was batting, the ball hit Stokes and went
Yes,
off
yes,
for a boundary?
yep, yes,
Back
definitely.
then, England said, listen, it's within the rules, it's there. Back then, there was no spirit of the game. Why did, like, then they'll be, oh, Stokes did not see the ball coming towards him. He obviously knew the ball's coming towards him. Obviously, he
Definitely.
knew it.
Yeah.
Come on. Yeah. So,
When Mitchell Stark catches the ball and then he drags it
yeah.
along the ground, Glenn
Yeah.
McGrath on air, he called it rubbish, right? He called for
Yeah.
the laws of the game. He's in control of the ball, but while
Yeah.
landing, he's definitely not in control because he put the ball on the ground. Now the same
Yeah.
thing which is going now, it's going against, from England's point of view, it's going against you. The decision is going against you, and hence you bring in the spirit of the game, which
Yeah.
which is funny.
No, I think both teams have had a history of doing dubious things. Make no mistake, Australia are no saints. Um, I think the Stark catch was dubious enough to be deemed not out. There were a few things that were not gray, that were in the grayish area, and I think whenever it's gray, it is not out. It's not out. It's not out. Whenever it is gray, whenever it's not clear if the fingers are underneath the ball, whenever it's not clear if he's contacting the boundary or not because of a shadow, or whenever it's not clear if he's in control or not while he's diving, it's not out. So I was with England on that front, but I think this whole thing with Bairstow was just a whole lot of rubbish. It's nice though, because it just makes for more popcorn to be eaten in front of the TV, because it's all so interesting, and these two teams just want to kill each other at every possible opportunity. So yeah, typical Ashes.
Typical Ashes. Can't wait for it. I mean, today there's a game as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it'll be fun. It'll be fun.
Yeah. One last question.
Thanks.
What
Sure.
challenge do you have? What challenge do you have for the listeners if they can take one thing to improve their lives? What in
I
any
think,
1%?
yeah. Um, Two things I think come to mind. Firstly, I think A is, everybody throws in rubbish about following your, like there are these broad lines that are thrown on the internet about following your passion. But I think, how can you truly sit down with yourself and be absolutely honest about who you are and what do you want to do? What are your shortcomings? Where do you fall short? What are your strengths? And what that you do going forward is going to bring you happiness and some impact in society. um if you answer these questions truthfully, by cutting out all the noise, you'll have a head start for sure. And then I think just going beyond survival mode to being in a mode of creativity, to be in a place of joy, to be in a place of happiness and peace, I think is the next step for anyone who creates in life. So I wish everyone all the best to be able to find their honest self and then go out and create by tapping into, their unique selves.
Yeah, man.
And
Beautiful.
I wish the same for you as well. Thanks for having me on the
Thank
show.
you. Thank you. Thank you so much, man. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Cheers. Thanks, Santosh.
Yeah.
Have a good one.
Yeah.